All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the channel. We have a special guest here today, Telmo Sampaio. Telmo, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, how's it going, guys? So my name is Telmo. I'm a software developer, and I'm here today to talk about web development with Anar.
Great, great. So, Telmo, would you like to tell us a little bit about why you got into programming, maybe what it was to pique your interest and how you got into it?
Yeah, of course. So I actually got into web development like a few years ago. So I'm originally from Portugal. I was studying at the time civil engineering. I finished my degree and I moved to the UK to try to get a job. But it was hard in the beginning, I remember, because every company was asking me for some kind of experience. I just had graduated, so I had no experience. So I was getting a bit frustrated with that. And during my spare time as a hobby, I was actually learning to code to build some websites. I was into an anime that is quite popular called Dragon Ball Z. I don't know if
Oh,
you
yeah,
know
yeah.
it.
Of
So
course.
I love this Dragon Ball Z, and I wanted to build like a website, maybe to share some of the episodes with other people and so on. So I was like, I want to build a website for that, just for fun. And I was like, wow, this is cool. This is really good. And, the time was just going and I couldn't still get a job as a civil engineer. I was sending the CVs, no responses at all. And I was getting a bit like, wow, what's going on? I spent so many years in the university studying and now I can't get a job. It was like all was not worth it. It was sometime around like 2014 that I actually found a blog from a girl, which I don't remember, otherwise I would share it, that she was saying that you can actually get into the industry of software development, of coding in general, without having to go to university and getting a degree. And I was like, no, this can't be possible. No, because the last thing that I wanted was to go back to the university, spend a lot of time and money, which I didn't have. I didn't have time and money. So I was like, yeah, wow. If this is really true, I would love to get into this because I actually love to code. I'm doing this as a hobby for fun. And will actually people pay me to do this? That sounds a bit crazy because I actually love to do this. And will there be people out there that will be able to pay me for this? And when I realized that it was true, I just put all my effort into it.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I have a similar story. I was also very surprised that you don't need a university degree. And I think that's a very common misconception. I don't know why. It's not like anybody ever told me you need a college degree, but most developers you meet, I guess when you're in university, like they become
Hmm.
developers because they went to university. So you just
Yeah.
assume. But yeah, yeah, same thing. I studied HR and business, completely unrelated to technology in general. And also at some point like started coding. And just like you said, when you start it, it almost becomes so fun. It's almost like you're playing a game. Like once you get past that initial hump, right? And that's something I try to talk about a lot is that a
Hmm.
lot of people give up in the very beginning, and the very beginning is the hardest part, right?
Exactly.
So you also have a lot of experience teaching and making courses. Could you talk a little bit about kind of your teaching experience, what you think maybe makes a
Hmm.
good course,
Hmm.
what people should look for when choosing a course or just like structuring their curriculum?
Hmm. So, of course, different people, they will have different opinions about this. I actually started to make some tutorials on my channel with different goals in mind. The first goal that I had in mind was to create some content for other people, explaining it like they were 5 years old.
Hmm.
Because sometimes, I don't know, maybe it's me that I just take too long to understand some stuff. I just feel like I was finding it other content online where people, they were just like rushing through it and missing some steps. And I was like, I can't really follow what's going on in here, especially when you are a beginner. Maybe now, if I'm going to go over some of these tutorials because I have more experience, it's just easier. But I was like, I need to make something a bit more detailed for people to go through and understand. And also, I started to make some tutorials on some things in particular, because what I have seen is like sometimes we are going to Udemy or some other places where we are going through a course that is like 12 hours or something, and it's super difficult, especially if you are working on a full-time job, to go over a course that is, I don't know, 14 hours, 20 hours, it just takes too long. If I can spend 1 hour a day just learning this, is going to be a lot. So
Yeah.
14 hours is going to take a long time. So what I try to do usually with my tutorials is focus on a particular thing that I want to teach. So I don't know. I remember back in the days, I was trying to go and learn about the login system, and I couldn't find a tutorial just on login system. There would be somewhere in the middle of a big project that I had to go
Mm.
many steps in between, and I would never get to that point. And I was like, okay, I need to do just a tutorial on this particular topic, for example.
Yeah, yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. I've seen those Udemy courses where it's like build a React, full React app with a database and then login and this and that in like 3 days.
Yeah,
I,
and the problem of that is also that this happens to me, so I imagine that this is going to happen with a lot of people. When you are building a project that long or following along, somewhere in the middle or by the end, you almost forgot about the steps that you did in the beginning. So you are kind of a bit lost on what's happening in there. So that's another disadvantage, in my opinion, from these really long courses.
that's something I find is actually wrong with like attending classes as well, because just like assuming somebody can learn something and then move on to something else right away, that doesn't really work with programming. And somebody brand new to programming doesn't understand that, because when you're learning history or you're learning geography or you're learning whatever, like you can learn one thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. But with programming, sometimes you have to learn one thing, then the next thing, but then the second thing you might need to spend like a long time on, right? Like you
Exactly.
want, especially when it comes to the core stuff, like me personally, it took me so long to understand, like really understand what a loop does, right?
Hmm.
Because it's just hard to like comprehend, like what do you mean? It's like how, right? You can kind of get it to work through the examples, but especially with online courses, just because you could get past an example, it doesn't mean you understand it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, what advice would you give somebody, I guess, brand new looking to get into software development? Because
Um,
nowadays I feel the dynamic has shifted a little bit.
Yeah. So the thing is, if someone wants to get into web development, the first advice that I would give is just like to see really if they would enjoy doing it, because there's a problem at the moment is that when I got into web development around like 2014, it was like the beginning of web development, like popular,
Yeah,
because now it's like kind of mainstream.
yeah,
But at that time, it was still not that popular. But right now, because everybody wants to become a web developer, everybody wants to get in, because first of all, there is no degree required, just as we
mm-hmm.
talked. Then the salaries are amazing anywhere in the world, even if you are in
Yep.
those countries that are a bit underdeveloped. The salary base for a web developer is going to be good compared to other jobs. So yeah, everybody's saying, "Wow, this is what I want to do. Maybe I can even work remotely. This is
Mm.
the dream." But the thing is, some people are just jumping on it just because of these extra things, like, oh, because it pays well, or because, and they don't think about if they actually enjoy it or not. So I actually experienced this in firsthand with students, as an example. People who try to join in this because of all these perks, and then they actually don't enjoy it. They are coding and then they find it very struggling and they just quit. So I would say that before people they actually commit into, for example, buying a very expensive course, not a £10 or a
Yeah,
$10 Udemy
like a
course.
boot camp for like
Yeah,
10,000 or
that
something.
is okay. But before like trying to commit into a boot camp or a very expensive course or going into the university, I would say there are tons of free resources online on YouTube. We got this Code Academy, Free Code Camp, everybody knows.
The new
And
Boston.
give it a try. Give it a try. See if you actually enjoy what you are doing. And then, of course, if you feel like you are enjoying it and you would like to continue, there's loads of different options that people they can go through to become better and just learn some new skills.
Interesting. Yeah, you have a better perspective on this than I do, because I've taught a few people as well, but not nearly as many as you, I imagine. And for me, it's just hard to imagine somebody that gets it but doesn't like it, You know, from what I've noticed, people that don't like it just didn't really spend enough time to understand it. But you're saying
Mhm.
some people actually spend the time, but they just don't like it.
Yeah, this happens because what it happens is there's tons of people out there at the moment that they hate their jobs. I was one
Yeah.
of them. I was one of them before I was working as a web developer. I was working in a coffee shop when I moved to the UK. I
Hmm.
was living in London, and obviously I need to get a job. I had to
Of
get a
course.
job in order to pay my bills, and especially London is like a super expensive city. So I was working in a coffee shop so I could pay my bills, you know, I could sustain myself. And I really hated that job. I was starting at 5 o'clock in the morning. So this means that I would have to wake up at 3 in the morning to be there ready. And then all the activities in there, you know, sweep the floor, making sandwiches, take the rubbish out. It was very demanding and really hard. And I hated. And I would hear a lot of people saying that, oh, you know, I would be doing another job that I could hate, but if they were paying a lot of money, I wouldn't mind, even if I hate it. This is what
Yeah,
other people they were saying, and I was like,
right.
no. For me, is the next job that I'm gonna move into, I need to enjoy it because if you go every day to work and you hate it, it's just like soul crushing. It's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you were wise enough to think of that. I think when I had jobs I didn't like, I thought like those people. I would be okay with more jobs I don't
Yeah,
like
this
as
is
long
this
as
is what happens the majority of the times. Like, and
yeah.
I thought it at some point, like, even if I'm gonna hate this job that I'm gonna do next, at least it's gonna pay me well. Because I remember that when I was working in the coffee shop, I was like, I hate this job. It pays
Yeah.
really, really bad.
And
What
you're
the hell?
stressed because of the money too, right? Because you can't afford
Exactly.
things. Yeah, but the sad irony of all of it, once I became a developer and I became I'd like to think I'm a decent developer. The sad irony of it is that you actually can't become good if you don't like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because it's like I got to see what it's like to even really like a job, right? To be really into it. Like it's one thing to even like I've had jobs I've kind of liked that was okay, like I wasn't miserable,
Hmm.
but it wasn't like I would go home and I would think about, oh, but like what if you could do it this way? What if you could do it that way? I think that's a sign that you really like the job. As
Hmm.
like when you're willing to think about it or even work on it after hours for free, right? Like if you're just doing it for like the money and as soon as the clock runs out, you're not willing to touch even a line of code, that's probably not a good sign.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a problem with that as well. Is that there are tons of jobs for developers out there that you will not learn anything. You are basically doing the same job over and over again. So you are at work, you are doing the same job repetitively all the time. And if you're gonna stay there 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it's gonna be the same. You're not gonna learn anything. So it's gonna be really up to you if you enjoy what you do to learn some new skills at home in your own time, because like this you are actually learning some new things, you are making yourself more marketable, like to other
Yeah,
companies.
exactly.
Look, I know this stuff, I know this other stuff. Because if you only know what you do at work, you're going to be very limited.
Yeah, yeah, and even at work, like even if they're doing different stuff, if you're not interested, you're gonna try to just do what you know and like not take on extra work, extra energy, you're just gonna take the easy way. But exactly the whole marketable thing, like every couple of years, job descriptions are getting new like things they're asking for, right? And you have to know them. So you have to
Exactly.
go, you have to learn, you have to educate yourself for sure. Something else I think is also worth like thinking about for these people is that everybody knows what a developer is, but there's all these other jobs around developers that pay just as well. That you
Hmm.
can you can get an like you can get that job easier even in my opinion, right? That nobody talks about. So I'll talk about this as well, but I'm just curious, what would you tell somebody that doesn't like programming? Because you've actually had examples, right? Like if you see somebody really doesn't like programming, but they still hate their job, they want to, transition into technology. What is some advice you give them? Maybe what are some potential jobs that you suggest to them?
Of course. So um there are different jobs that the people they can do if they want to jump into a tech job, for example. So there's many different things people they can get as a kind of hybrid front end developer. Actually, one of my first jobs was as a front-end developer, and they actually allowed me to do a lot of design. So this was an amazing thing for me because I actually like to design as well, to be creative, building some different user interfaces. So there are tons of different jobs out there that they allow you to do different things other than, for example, just coding. So if there are some people out there that they find it a bit, difficult to just coding, there are other jobs like designers that you can code a bit, but you can also design. There are jobs, for example, for testers. So people,
Yeah.
they can actually go over websites, make a full test out of them, make some reports about it. So data science now is getting super popular as well. Maybe might have a bit of maths on there as well, but
Yeah.
you can't run away of these things when you actually get into a tech job, because one way or another you will be required to have some actual tech skills, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. Some more than others for sure. Like I
Mhm.
think a designer doesn't really need to know a
Mhm.
ton of
Or
math.
a email developer. I actually got one of my students. It was 16 years old,
Oh
and
wow,
yeah, he was 16 years old, and he got a job. Meanwhile, we were doing the course. Um, $30,000. I think that's the conversion. So for a 16 years old getting $30,000 on his first job as an email developer is just like, it was amazing.
it's good. Yeah, because I don't know what the like here 30,000 I think is minimum wage, but it's
Mhm.
Canadian dollars, so they're much smaller. Like this is 30,000 pounds maybe
No,
or
no, he's 27,000 pounds. So it
pounds.
should be
Okay,
around.
yeah, that's like 50,000 Canadian dollars or 16. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah, for me, I would also definitely suggest software testing. QA, it's a huge field, it's a huge career of its own. It's what I started with, and I've met a lot of brilliant developers that have like PhDs,
Mhm.
development managers that also started as software testers. Because I don't know how it is in the UK, but I've noticed this trend here. I imagine it's like this everywhere. Um, it's very hard to get a junior developer job. There's not a lot of junior developer jobs because junior developers are just not that needed because of the type of the work. They're needed, but there's like a saying, two juniors can't do what one senior can do, right? And you
Or
can
even
literally
three
hire,
juniors.
yeah, you can literally hire like one senior for the cost of two juniors. A lot of people get into testing and then eventually transition into software development.
Mhm.
And you can get into testing and transition into anything inside technology. So another great job, I think, for somebody that does not like programming. I have a colleague with a computer science degree. She joined and she was doing like she was working with like a little bit of code, a little bit of APIs, but like a data pipeline. But then when the company got restructured, everybody kind of got to, think about if they want to do something else because that team had to get dispersed. And she became a product manager. And I think that's a great job for somebody that doesn't like programming or doesn't even want to do anything hands-on at all, because product managers, like, in terms of like the most technical thing they do is probably like, I don't know, maybe once in a while write a SQL query or make a ticket or something.
Mhm.
So yeah, the point I'm making is I think getting into QA, software testing, you don't need a degree for that for sure, and you don't need a ton of technical knowledge. You just need to kind of have some general stuff, and there's a lot of resources online where they can train you on that, and from there you can really branch out in any direction you want. I've actually met software development managers that got straight into software development management from a software testing role, right?
Right. I've seen this in firsthand as well. And I think this is actually a kind of a great strategy, if we can say it like
Yeah.
that. I've seen it multiple times throughout my career. So, for example, one time I was working in a company where we had a guy that he was working in the copyright section. So he was just like writing some stuff for the blog of the company. And one time he kind of approached us like in the dev team and said, look, I'm actually learning this by myself. I'm actually enjoyed it. Would there be any kind of opening for me in here for this team? And you know what, a lot of companies, people, they are not aware of this, but a lot of companies, they allow their employees to just like join other kind of parts of the company, like maybe join the marketing team or maybe join the
Yeah.
dev team and so on. And they really allow people to move inside of the company to make them happy and to continue in there. And also, I've seen this a lot throughout my students. So most of my students that I have right now, they are coming from companies where, for example, the students, they were working on a certain call center or doing customer service or other things, that they said, look, we actually would like to go into the dev team, and the companies, they pay their employees to come to us, to our bootcamp where I'm teaching, to train them to become web developers, and then
Oh
they go
wow.
back. It's amazing. This is an opportunity that a lot of people, that they are struggling to get into their first job. If you have a job right now, why don't you contact your employer and say, look, I would like to move into something like that? Maybe they open some kind of vacancy for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think something people, like employees don't put enough value on, maybe like more junior employees, is that when you want to transition into a software development job, like they might be looking at people from the outside, and those people might be able to prove that they have the coding skills. But what they value just as much, or maybe even more, is how good of a worker are you? How good of an employee are you? And if you've
Exactly.
been working at a company for a while, you've already proven that you're a good employee. So the company would probably rather even move you and just train you a little bit and have you stay and have you be happy than lose a good worker and then have to find one and maybe it doesn't work out. Because
Exactly.
I've seen lots of developers hired that were just like they can code, but they're just terrible employees, right? Like they have
Exactly.
bad communication skills, like they come late, they're like they just do their own thing. Yeah, yeah. So I totally agree. There's a lot of opportunity to move once you're inside, and coming into a junior role is just so difficult from the outside. Like I know people with master's degrees that just did the whole QA roundabout way, right? Because it's just so hard. Everybody's doing it. You got to do, and nowadays, I'm not sure if you've, I mean, I imagine you haven't interviewed in a while, but nowadays it's becoming a standard in North America at least to do like the Google style interviews where you have like 7 technical interviews or like 6 technical interviews, right?
Wow.
And like somebody that's just starting out, like that's kind of hard. That's kind of a lot. And imagine, like actually, one of my colleagues, he joined and he was interviewing with Amazon, and he has a computer science degree from Waterloo, and he failed on like the last stage. It was like the 6th or 7th stage. Imagine how like what
Wow.
that does to your motivation and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's really too much. From what I have seen in here in the UK, from through our process that we usually do, we usually have like a 3 stages process. So we have one that is like the first, like a phone call, just to get to know the candidates, just to see, who they are, what they are doing, what they are looking for. And through this first talk, is not kind of a really a technical talk, but we can see what the people knows and what they are doing and so on. If the company wants to move forward, then there is what we call a technical test. So it's a test that people, they can do it at home. They can usually is like something related to the job that they are supposed to be doing. And then there's like a third stage, which will be an interview face to face, where people, they can talk about what they did in their project and the decisions that they took, why did they took them, and so on. So I think even 3 stages like this is a lot. So I guess that 6 stages, like you just mentioned in there, is I believe is too much.
Have you ever interviewed employees? Like interviewed developers?
If I've interviewed developers,
Yeah.
yes. So I've interviewed developers a lot before I joined Code Nation. And I would say that when we are interviewing developers, obviously the skill is one of the important things to see if they are fit to the job, but it's also very important to check their social skills as well.
Oh
Is
yeah.
this developer going to be a good fit in our company? What are his values? So there's loads of things that we need to check, because it happens quite a lot that sometimes we are hiring someone to go into a company, and then is actually good, but if you ask them to do something, they just ignore what you say. Or
Yes.
if you tell them, look, maybe this is not how we want to structure our code, our project, maybe you need to adapt these kind of practices. And they don't follow it. So it becomes kind of a pain to us. So I would say that when we are interviewing someone, it's difficult to know, of course, like in the first hand. But yeah, I would probably take more in consideration the social skills as well.
Yeah, I agree. I've interviewed a few as well, and I think talking more is definitely important. Like even if you're very smart and you have all this stuff on your resume, but you don't talk, maybe like you don't click with the interviewer, it's gonna hurt your application. And even if you're just starting out, even if you're a junior, you're somebody new, and you got the interview, and maybe you get a question you don't really know the answer, it definitely helps to talk through it. Often interviewers are willing to help you as long as you can explain your thought process. If your thought process makes sense, like something that a programmer would do, like kind of step by step, first I tried this, then I tried this, then I would try this, even if you don't really know how to do it. Explaining what you would try in what order, I think really improves your chances when interviewing for a role. That's something I have
Definitely.
noticed.
Definitely.
So that's some advice I think I would give to anybody new. When I started off in QA as well. So I did the whole roundabout thing as well. Um,
Did you
and
had some fights with the developers when you were doing the QA? Some
no,
arguments?
I hear that stereotype, but maybe I just got lucky. I worked with great people. I worked with really great developers. It was a startup mentality, so everybody was kind of like friends.
Mhm.
But if you get into QA nowadays, because nowadays test automation is something everybody wants to adopt. Most companies
Mhm.
have adopted it, but whoever hasn't want to. And if you get into a company as a QA, you can basically learn to code for free. Like you can get paid to learn to code. That's how I look at it, right?
Mhm.
Because I took like a basic C course long time ago. Like it's C, it's not very transferable. It's just, like the basics, loops and stuff was
Mhm.
transferable. But what I got to do in that job was I basically spent like 9 months just building out their test automation framework. And if I don't know if you have any experience with that, like that can be legitimate software development if you approach it that way. Because
Of
essentially
course.
you're writing code. You can take the approach of, hey, whatever, I'm just a tester, like copy some script from somewhere, like fill some stuff out, or you can actually approach it like a proper project, like a proper repository, kind of apply like object-oriented design and proper code design, and get people to review your code. And that's something I did, and I think that's a really great path to go as well, because not only are you getting paid, not only are you doing a job that's kind of fun,
Definitely.
like,
Definitely.
yeah, it's just, and even if you don't get to transfer in the company, you can put on your resume, hey, I spent 9 months coding, or I spent a year coding. Or even if you don't want to transition, a lot of people continue in this career, and it pays like close to what a software developer gets paid. Software developer pay varies depending on what type of software developer you are, but this is almost like a type of software developer, test automation engineer. I think that role has really grown recently as well, but people don't really talk about that. It doesn't sound as
Yeah,
glamorous as
definitely.
a
I,
software
I, I
developer.
think that is a great way to start, a great way for you to get into the industry as well, because it's really easy to get yourself after, if you are in QA, get into a development position after. Maybe, like you said, maybe you really are going to enjoy doing QA testing, and maybe you would just want
Yep.
to pursue a career in there. But there's a lot of people that they still don't understand one thing is like, when you are getting into the industry, the get as a developer, the difficult part, the most difficult part is the first job.
Yeah.
And sometimes I see people, and even some of my students, that they are like picky. Oh, maybe that job is not perfect for me. Maybe I just
Yeah.
want this and that. And you know what? That job is asking me to work with Python, but I want to work with PHP, or I want to
No.
work with, that's not really what I'm looking for. Just get the first job. That's it. Once you get the first job, you get all the experience that you need. You need that CV, the history on your CV, that proof of actually you have worked professionally as a developer. Once that is in there on your CV, that's it. You give it a year and you can move on to any other company.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned like programming languages. I think that's a sign of like somebody that's very junior and like doesn't really, like, not very experienced. Because I remember being like that as well. The company where I'm at, we use cool technology. Like we use Scala, we use Elixir, a lot of functional programming. I was really like into that. I read like two big textbooks on Scala, right? And I was like, oh, this is like the coolest thing ever. And you read like posts about top thing programming languages and this and that. But after you get a certain amount of experience, like you don't even care. Like I personally, I don't care what programming language I work with. Like I can work with anything. That's like, and when you look at another developer, like when you look at a resume, like we've hired JavaScript developers, even though we don't have JavaScript anywhere in our backend stack, we've hired backend developers with only JavaScript experience. So programming languages, like in my opinion, do not matter at all, right?
Exactly.
Like if you,
In the end of the day, if you have those fundamentals, so this is actually something that I try to tell my students all the time. Learn the fundamentals of a programming language, learn creating variables, your functions,
yeah,
loops, objects, and so on. And then it's going to be very easy for you to move on to another programming language because maybe the syntax can be a bit different, but the fundamentals, they are all the same. So you can do basically the same thing. And
yeah,
what people they don't understand as well is that when you get into a job, even if the job is great or whatever, you are not going to be the majority of the time doing just like the latest brilliant thing,
no,
amazing or whatever. You're going to do some tasks that they are going to be recurring all the time. So
yeah,
if you really want to work on that amazing thing that you are thinking about, you have your own time as well that you can go learn, build some things on the side. I advise people all the time to, when you get these kind of skills as a developer, you can build anything that comes to your mind. You have the skills, you have the internet with unlimited resources.
yeah.
So why don't you put your time and your skills into something like that?
Yeah, yeah. Nowadays, most tools out there, like development tools, are free. Like there's a move away from proprietary stuff. Like, back in the day, if you wanted a database, you would have to go pay Microsoft. Like now you can do
Exactly.
anything. You can like build a data pipeline for free as well. Like there's all these Apache tools, like anything you can think of, you can just go home and make, really. Yeah, so I totally agree there as well. I think we've gone through the core stuff. I want to focus on kind of people that are new, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's the most important stuff. Like learn the fundamentals, have the right approach for your first job. Like you said, don't be picky. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous, being picky for
I,
your
I would
first
say
job.
I would say that one more thing that we could mention for people that this is a question that I get asked quite a lot is about projects ideas for their portfolio website. Um, how many projects should they display? So from my personal experience, from getting applications from other developers trying to join companies, what I see all the time is that sometimes, imagine just as an example, if I get 50 applications or 100 applications and I need to go through them, if I'm going to a profile of someone that is applying and there is like 10 projects in there, and like I'm not going to go over 50 applications and check every single project that they have. We check some of the projects that we think that they might be a bit more interesting, and we check what's in there. We check the code quality, and see. A problem that is really occurring a lot is that people, they just go on to projects from Udemy or places like that, and they copy the project, basically what they did on
The
that
example,
course.
right?
They just use the same exact thing and then they
Mhm.
put it in there. And this is easily noticeable when we look from one project to the other, and we see that the way that you are structuring your code, the way that you are putting class names, different things, the way that you are creating variables, we see that is completely different from project to project. We say, no, 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 there's something wrong in here. This was not the same person that did all of these. Why are you
I
using a
see.
different syntax in here? And why are you using different code structure in here in this? So people, they get caught and they have even no idea that, this will basically reject their application.
Interesting. Yeah, I never even thought about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I guess if you're doing different courses, it's different people.
exactly, because the thing is, this is almost like your hand signature.
Yeah.
When you are making your signature, like for passport or for whatever, you don't make your signature different all the time. You need to make sure it's the same. It's the same way like when you are building a project, the way that you structure your code, the way that you apply some classes, I don't know, for front end, or create variables or create functions. If you do different projects and I come in there and I say, this structure that you have in here is completely different from, it was not you, it was someone else.
Yeah.
So we know automatically, okay, this is not a project that this person has done it by themselves. So
Yeah, because there's a lot of different ways to do the same thing, right? And
exactly,
everybody has a preference. And then you're saying like you
exactly.
got three projects and you're doing it differently in every project.
Simple things like the way that people create variables. Sometimes they use camel case, sometimes they use snake case.
Mhm.
Even the way that you word your variables, we can easily notice if it has been created by the same person or not.
Interesting. Definitely good advice for somebody building out their portfolio on their own, not attending a boot camp and like going through all these courses. Yeah, you shouldn't be copying anything, right? That goes back to what I was saying in the very beginning. Like, just because you were able to finish a tutorial doesn't mean you understood it, right? And if you
Exactly.
can't
You
recreate
could
that,
easily, exactly. You could easily go to a GitHub repository from one of these courses. You don't even follow along. So maybe you can watch a few bits and then you just grab the source code and you put it. I've seen this many times.
yeah, that's just the approach, right? I talk about like the approach to learning a lot, that it's different, like I said, from like learning history, learning something else. Like you gotta spend the right amount of time in the beginning. And like you said, it's only hard in the beginning. Once you get your first job, it's just like smooth sailing from there on.
Of course, the opportunities, they just come knock on the door.
Yeah, I
But
don't see the
I would say maybe one thing that we could talk about as well, that would be, what kind of projects people they can put on their portfolio website. um People are like, what should I put on my portfolio website? What kind of project should I put in there? And it really depends now on what you are trying to look for. Because it's very difficult, someone if he's starting out, it's very difficult for you to be a full stack, to understand everything, front end, back end at the same time. If you want to get that first job, I would say that if you are more of a visual person, that you like to see things on the front end, try to build some kind of websites, which I'm going over. And if you're going more for backend, try to build more projects towards like backend. So for front end, I would say that people, what they could do is usually like create a clone of a website that is super popular. I don't know, go to Twitter, go to Instagram, go to the front page of YouTube. You don't have to make all the functionalities of it, because as a front end developer, you actually want to build front end interfaces that they are responsive, they adapt to tablets, they adapt to mobiles. Make sure that you are all the images and the assets, they are optimized so your page loads fast. I would say, go to one of these places, try to replicate it, make it a clone, and just like make it responsive, make it adaptive to all the different kinds of devices. So this would be one idea. And now you're going to ask me, hey, but tell me which project. I don't know. Go to Samsung, go to Apple. Apple, usually they have really minimalistic designs on their
Yep.
websites, but they look really good. Why don't you go there, try to check, for example, one of these? And this tells me, first of all, that if you are applying to a job as a front-end developer, I can see that if I'm going to give you a design, that you can actually might be able to follow the design and build something close to it. I understand that the knowledge of a junior developer is very limited, but if you can do as best as you can and close, that's a really good plus for you. Then, you have other options that you can use to create portfolios, projects. That would be, for example, using a framework for the front end. You got React, you got Vue, you got Angular. They are super popular. So create one of the projects using one of these frameworks. So let's say, for example, that in your city, Angular is the most popular one.
Yep.
So don't go and make a project with React. It doesn't make sense. even if you love React and you hear React all along, if in your city Angular is the popular, what you want is to get a job. So learn Angular to get the job, and then in your own spare time you can learn React maybe for a future.
It
This
can
would be
probably
just
give you a small advantage, I think, knowing the right framework. But generally, like I think if you have, like we said, the fundamentals down, like it doesn't really matter. Like the frameworks are pretty similar.
exactly.
Yeah, one thing I would add to like, copying a clone is that that's what a lot of people do though. Like
Hmm.
every portfolio out there has a Twitter clone. Like you mentioned Twitter, like I've seen so many of these Twitter clones. I think for a front end role, like what you want to show off is cool design skills, right? And you gave a good example, like the Apple website. So
Hmm.
I've seen some crazy designs. I think finding a website with a really cool design, like you can come up with your own, but it's
Hmm.
hard. It's really hard to come up with a design. So I think if you can find a website that uses really cool animations, really cool effects, like maybe some snow or like some rotating shape, right? Like
Hmm.
parallax effects, like skews, you can show off your design skills. And for a front end developer, not your design skills, like your mock-up skills.
Hmm.
And for a front end developer, I think that's important. And especially if the first section, like that header, those big headers that people do nowadays,
Hmm.
if that looks really cool, then you can really grab the attention of the person reviewing the portfolio instead
Of
of having
course,
like a general Twitter clone that the person's going to see
of
20
course.
others of.
One of the best thing that people they can do is actually when they are doing these clones, I've seen this, is making their own version of the personalized design. So maybe they are making a clone of a certain website, Twitter or Apple or whatever, but then they can add their own elements to them, making them a project that is actually personalized. So it's just like you said, like they can add some effects, they can add some transitions on scroll or on click. Of course, all of these adds up to see that you actually have the skills necessary.
Yeah, yeah. For your point about full stack and backend, like I'm not sure it's a bad idea to apply to full stack. What I've noticed in like full stack roles is that they're typically front end heavy, right? So I think for a junior full stack role, like you wouldn't need to know a ton of back end stuff to have a full stack role. So I do think it's worthwhile apply because I also think there aren't a lot of the junior backend at least. There aren't a lot of junior backend roles. Like there aren't a lot of junior roles in general, but the backend roles are really like the minority of that group.
Because usually people when they want to get their first job, everyone wants to start with the front end because it's just easier.
Yeah.
I would say that I remember that when I was learning how to code and I was getting the backend, to me was like a mystery. It was like a mystery box.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I could do with the backend. I didn't even know how the backend looks like. So I guess this is something that the majority of the people they feel like, and I guess that's why most of the people they just try to go over front end roles, of course.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's a good idea because it's just like there's much less that a junior can do on the back end. Like you go through these tutorials of like, authentication systems. For example, when somebody like logs in and you hash your password, like nobody uses that anymore in like mainstream companies. A backend developer is going to have to understand OAuth, is going to have to understand like more complicated things. And you're going to have a very hard time, I think, proving yourself as a junior to get into a backend role. Like I think even like a junior backend role that requires a year of experience actually needs somebody with a little bit of experience that's worked with a few different things. So I've actually never seen like a pure junior with no experience being hired for a backend role. Every junior backend developer I've seen hired has had at least a little bit of experience, at least a couple of internships or something. So I would say full stack is a good place to be because you can know a little bit of backend, but you can still apply to this job and you can still have a portfolio that's front end focused. Front end developer is a great place to be for a junior because most roles are front end. They're easier to get into. You can leverage things like HTML and CSS, which is much simpler than leveraging like all this backend stuff, like you mentioned, like all this black box stuff. I think it's also more standardized. Like there's one HTML, there's one CSS, and there's like three frameworks that are almost the same for JavaScript. For projects, I also think something that would help is using like having your projects kind of focused on what type of job you're applying to. Like even like if it's like regardless where in the stack, like if even if it's like let's say just a front end job, let's say like in your city it's mostly retail companies, right?
Hmm.
Retail companies are going to deal with data, they're going to deal with big data. So you can kind of use some tools on the back end, maybe like show them off on your resume, on your portfolio. I guess for back end you won't have a portfolio, and it'll set you apart a little bit, right? So like you said, you're going through a lot of resumes, you're seeing a lot of portfolios. I think it's important to stand out.
Of course,
So whatever you could do, little things like they make a
in the end of
difference.
the day, you want to get the job. So however you
Yeah.
can stand out, it will be the best for you. The most important thing in the end of the day is like, how bad do you really want to get this job? You know,
Oh
how
yeah.
bad do you really want, how much effort do you want to put in this? Because um in the end of the day, you know, what I see is a lot of people that they want to get something, but you know, they don't put the effort on it, and they just want things like fast, like this is going to happen next month. Or I see people, can I learn how to code in 3 months and get a job? And you know, in the end of the day, is going to be, how much do you want to get this job? How much effort are you going to put in there? Is it possible to learn everything that you need in order to get that first job? Yes, 3 months is possible, but you will need a lot of dedication. You will need a lot of coaching. So it's really going to be up to you. How bad do you want this? How much effort do you want to put on it? If you're just going to work 1 hour a day, or maybe like 1 hour a week, it's going to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
difficult.
Expectation management is very important. I don't really know how to explain that to somebody though, that because for some people maybe 3 months is not enough, right? I compare learning how to develop software kind of like learning math in high school. Like some people
Exactly.
got it right away. Some people just spent an hour a day and they were good. And maybe
Mm.
in like a boot camp or something, some people will be good.
Exactly.
But like you can't have like this hard limit and expectation. I'm only going to spend 3 hours a day and I'm only going to do it for 3 months and it's going to be done. Because I understand where it comes from as well. Like you can, like other courses I've mentioned, history, geography, like whatever, some non-technical topic, like you can do that. But here you just can't, right? Maybe 3 months is not going to be enough. Maybe you won't learn it.
It's really going to depend on what kind of resources do you have available. I remember that when I was learning by myself, like as a self-taught, like yourself, when we are learning something by ourselves and we don't have guidance from someone, we are like, you know, do I know enough? Do I know enough to go and get a job now? Or
Yeah.
I don't understand a certain topic. I'm trying to learn it, but I can't understand. Where should I go, or what can I do to try to understand it better? Because it just doesn't fit in my head. It doesn't sync. And this is the problem with being a self-taught, is like, it's completely free. You can find things online, or you can buy courses. You can decide how you learn, but you don't know how long it's going to take it to. So I would say, you know, that people who are actually, for example, in boot camps, just for example, my students, I understand that them after 3 months, because I've personally taught them whatever they need. If they put some effort and everything, they will be ready. They will have the skills, because we do a lot of activities, we do a lot of projects. If they get stuck into something like, oh, I don't know how to pass data from the front end to the back end, or I don't know how to, they are not just stuck at home by themselves looking through the internet like, oh, I don't know what. They have someone that actually can tell them, look, this is what you can do, this is how you can fix it. So obviously this is not going to be the same for everyone. So myself, I remember when I was learning, I couldn't afford a bootcamp and I would never go into there. But you know, so it will just take a bit more time, but it's going to be really up to you. Are you going to quit when you find one of these problems, or are you going to continue and fight with it, try to learn as much as you can? And then in the end of the day, everyone will go through this kind of imposter syndrome, like,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not too good enough, maybe I don't know enough, maybe no one will ever pay me to do this, maybe this is just a dream. So yeah, I guess that we all go through these kind of things, so we just need to be a bit brave, a bit more confidence, and you know, just apply for jobs, because people, they are afraid of applying for jobs. And in the end of the day, you know, if you don't apply, you don't know if you are. I can tell you that in the past I failed many interviews,
Yep.
and this actually helped me in the future
Yep.
with other interviews. I remember one interview that one time they asked me like, hey, what do you know about our company? Because you are just in here. And I said, oh, nothing. I don't know nothing about your company. I just saw the advert online and I applied because I wanted to get the job. And
Wrong
I
answer.
exactly. So at the time, I remember like, wow, that interview was really good. We had a really good chat. But now that I look back to the things that I said in certain interviews, I'm like, obviously I would never get hired because they are asking me to see if I was actually interested in them, to see if I know the company culture and so on. And I just said, oh no, I don't know nothing about your company. I just applied because I want to get the job.
Yeah, a lot
So
of
don't be what I recommend to people is like, don't be afraid of applying to interviews. Don't be afraid of going to interviews. Because in the end of the day, you don't lose anything. You don't have the job, so you are not going to lose anything.
yep.
You will have is getting some experience for the future will definitely help you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And with time, you'll learn that these questions have specific answers. Yeah, yeah, that's a separate skill, right? Interviewing. That's I don't think anybody like passed their first dev interview. Like you gotta get better at them and better at them.
And prepare yourself and just get a bit of experience, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Practice also, right? Like you said, you have to spend the time on yourself. Like when you have a coding challenge, like that's when a lot of people don't do well because you just didn't spend enough time practicing. So maybe we can talk a little bit about you. Like, are you currently working as a developer? Like you mentioned, you have you're teaching. So is that
Mm-hmm.
something you're balancing with a job, or kind of what's
So
your
so
next?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm teaching in a bootcamp, like I said, and we are also building our own platform so we can actually start as a digital agency. And obviously, I also on my own time, I like to develop as well. So I have my own website where I create my courses. So at the moment, I'm actually building my own platform completely from scratch, so using the MERN stack. um, and I really find it interesting, like how we have so many like developers online that they have their own YouTube channels and they create courses and so on, and they don't create like their own platforms to do some sales of products or anything. And I'm using a service that is quite popular called Teachable. So
Hmm.
this kind of platform allows you to sell their products in there, but they don't give you any kind of customization to the website. You can't add your own styling, you can't modify emails, you can't do a lot of different things. So it's almost like a cookie cutter. You put in there some products, it looks the same everywhere, and that's
Right.
it.
So you
and
can't
uh,
set yourself apart, right?
and exactly, and I would like to do many different things. I would like to create my own bundles, I would like to create my own discounts, I would like to create my own free courses. And I was like, why I don't just do my own platform so I decide everything that I can do? Because all I hear is people all the time saying, oh, if you are a developer, a WordPress developer, you are not a really real developer. People just talking like, and sometimes it's true, because when you are building something on something like a content manager like WordPress, and you have a theme, you can't do too much. You are limited to what the theme allows you to do, unless of course you know
Unless you download it.
how to hack the theme and just change it. But for regular people, it's like you can only do what that allows you to do. So I'm like, no, I need to have full control of what I want. I want to see how many people registered today. I want to create maybe some charts using, I don't know, charts.js or d3.js. Different things. When we are developers, we can actually create anything that comes into our mind. So that's
Yep.
exactly what I said. I'm going to create, and I've been creating it now for the past few months. Hopefully by the end of the year, I will have it released. So I'll be super happy for that, of course.
So is this something you're creating for your own teaching platform, or is this kind of like something you want other people to use as well?
No, so it's going to be like my own teaching platform. So
Got it.
people, they
Got it.
can go. I can offer some free courses. I can offer some paid courses as well. I would like to create maybe like really a path from a front end developer path, a
Hmm.
back end developer path, like a full stack. So there is a lot of stuff that people are going through, like these Udemy courses, but they don't actually have like things that you could actually use in a job. Most of the times they go HTML, CSS, they go to JavaScript. But I would like to give the option for people that if they want, maybe in this path, maybe learn SaaS, maybe learn less, maybe learn some Webpack, I don't know, different things that they could actually use, because most of the times what people are learning is just like the basic stuff, which is fine. But I would
Yep.
like to give more options to people that they actually want to specialize in some sort of stack, of course.
Yeah, so you want to make them from not job ready to job ready, basically, right? You want to
Exactly,
focus on getting
exactly.
the job. Yeah, that's something I noticed with a lot of online courses. They're just all over the place, and there's no like structure to which ones should you take. Like they're not career focused,
Exactly,
and you're
exactly.
trying to make it more career focused. Yeah, well, that's a lot of exciting stuff. Sounds like you have down the pipe. I mean, I hope the platform does well. I can't wait to see what it looks like. So, well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your insights.
Problem, Anna, was my pleasure to come in here and chat with you.
Thank you, thanks. I'll add your channel to the link, and yeah, everybody should check out your channel. I think your tutorials are great. I think your content is great,
Awesome.
and
Thank you, Anna, for inviting me today. And yeah, I hope to see you another time as well.